Well, we are on our 40th session on the Gospel of Mark. And on this occasion, we approach chapter 11. I did my doctoral dissertation in Rome at the Angelicum on verses 15, 16, and 17 of chapter 11, the so called temple cleansing, which I think among others, have proven it's really the opposite of a cleansing. In my dissertation, 7 elements that are present in a real uh, katharismos, purification of the temple, as described in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Those elements are present in Mark in reverse. So in Mark, it's really a portent of destruction. There's a famous book by a scholar named Telford, the barren tree, I think it's called, or the barren fig tree, showing in great detail how the fig tree episode, which flanks the temple act, comes before and after, is the interpretive sandwich or dovetail, which shows what happens to the temple after Jesus is done with it. Let's put it that way. I came up with the phrase Jesus gives the temple an infarct, a heart attack, stops the blood flow. We'll look at that in more detail later. I wanted to show you, to begin with, a page of my annotated Jerusalem Bible in Spanish. I taught from this Bible in the seminary in English because it is my Bible. I find things in it just by moving my hand. It's that much used, and it's uncanny. I can find almost, I think, everything in it, and I've got a lot of notes in it, and it would be irreplaceable. So that I was able to read it in, from the Spanish as if I were reading in English. And if you didn't know I was reading from Spanish, you would think that I had an English Bible with me. So I just wanted to share that as an incentive to have a favorite Bible. I've had this since 91 probably. Uh, to annotate, the paper has to be adequate for that, little details like that. And then I can't find things in any way comparable in other Bibles as I can with this one. So that as we do this 40th session and approach chapter 11 and then 12, 13 to 16, the end, it gets a lot heavier. And in fact, I was thinking that what many scholars say, which is that Mark is a passion narrative with a long introduction. I felt it to be true. I mean, 40 or 39 15-minute sessions, and now we get to the real drama. In Mark, Jesus takes one trip to Jerusalem. Some scholars think his ministry could have lasted 6 months. We get the 3-year ministry from John, where you have 3 Passovers, so you would have to have that kind of period of time. But in Mark, maybe he's just streamlining it. He is on his way to Jerusalem, and things will happen there. This episode of a blind beggar, Bartimaeus, which in Aramaic, Bar would be son, and then so he's son of Timaeus. I don't know how this fits really, except that the approach to Jerusalem would involve going by Jericho. he would be coming, I guess, in from the east, which is exactly, I think, where he would find, the money changers and that approach to the temple. I guess the Kidron Valley there, the Mount of Olives, is there too, to the east of Jerusalem. Very famous phrase, which we'll look at. My dissertation is available as a book, Edwin Mellon Press. It's small circulation. If it's still available, it costs over $100. You can find stuff off and on. I have my mark notes, about 70 pages, on my website, Bible Explainer Chavez. You Google that and you'll get it. And the 70 pages were written maybe 10 years after, so they're a lot more up to date and a very sort of new approach. And in fact, I want to go back to what I said last time about the toll tax that was required to go into the Holy Land. And I was mentioning that, and even though it's relevant to the Temple Act, because he overturns the tables of the money changers, and I said that there were 13 tables allowed, etc., to change any money pilgrims or other people had into an acceptable currency for the temple. Tyrian shekels with a higher purity level of silver. But, and I mentioned Exodus 30 as the place where you get this temple tax. See if I can find two passages, but the main one would be Exodus 30 verses 11 through 13, 14. This is where every Israelite 20 and over in age has to pay a half shekel. So this is, which is a weight. This is where you get the famous fish episode where Jesus tells Peter to go and get a fish with a full shekel. I guess 2 drachmas or something, I forget now. It's not in Mark, it's in Matthew. And this payment is considered to be a kopher, I said it. This is a kippur, Yom Kippur, atonement type, appeasement type root. And it's can be translated ransom. So this began because in Mark 10:45, Jesus tells the disciples, the Son of Man has not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a lutron, ransom for many. And I mentioned that lutron would be the singular of lutra, which is what is used in Exodus and other places. So that this half shekel has to be paid in sanctuary shekels in Exodus 30, verse 14. And so this is the basis for the temple tax. And it says here that you shall take the money of the kopher, Hakipurim, now it's called Hakipurim, like in Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, from the sons of Israel, and you shall give it for the service of the tent of meeting. So this is in the desert in Exodus, and it's not going to really be called a temple, except for this word here, sanctuary, which I assume is Mishkan. I'm not going to look it up now, but in any case, that's why we talked about that. But this would be tantamount to a toll tax for anybody coming into the land. You, in the census, etc., you pay this half shekel. And Jesus is the one who pays the ransom to enter into, quote unquote, the land, which is tantamount to return from exile, salvation, Jubilee, Leviticus 25, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, all sins wiped out, all debts wiped out in the Jubilee. Debts being an Aramaic word for sin also, as in the Our Father, forgive us our debts as we ourselves forgive our debtors in Matthew. Luke says, forgive us our sins as we ourselves have forgiven our debtors. So Luke has spiritual and material. Matthew uses the material for with both meanings, or maybe emphasizing the spiritual meaning. By the way, I think that I don't. I may go over 15 minutes from now on to 20 at most, because I don't want to cut myself too short given the richness of the material that we have. So I think we have a geographical factor here in mentioning this miracle. I think Matthew has two blind men. Here you have this Bartimaeus who's blind, and they want to shush him to not be bothering Jesus. As in other gospels, his entry into Jerusalem is met with the shushing, be quiet of the scribes and Pharisees, etc. And Jesus says even the rock would cry out, etc. So here he's called Son of David, clearly a messianic appellation. Have mercy on me. And he springs up and goes to Jesus, and certainly this would be at least in line with the passages in Isaiah 34 and 35, which are really like second Isaiah, exile, where the messianic era will bring the lame the ability to walk and the blind the ability to see, etc. So this is sort of a messianically flavored passage. So he follows him on the way, in via ente hodo. So again, we've been talking about how Mark mentions this way significantly, starting I think in chapter 10. So now he's drawing near to Jerusalem, and they mention these two places, Bethphage, which I forget what that means, but Bethany is normally considered to mean Beit Ani, the house of humility. And so I don't know whether they have a meaning for Bethphage. And then they go to the Mount of Olives. That's a very significant place. The Mount of Olives is where the Messiah is supposed to appear in the Jewish tradition. It's mentioned rarely in the Old Testament. In Ezekiel, the Lord leaves the polluted sanctuary by grades. He goes out of the Holy of Holies, which is the place that most attracts contamination, believe it or not. Jacob Milgram is an expert on Leviticus. And the Holy of Holies and its cover, the kaporet, the mercy seat or a propitiatory, whatever you want to call it, a gold cover, that is a magnet for impurity. You would think it's the holiest place, but it's also the most sensitive place for impurity and sin. So that's the first place that gets saturated, and that's the first place. That's the place the Lord leaves, and when He leaves the temple, forget it, chaos will come. But He leaves the temple by grades. The Heikal and the all the other Devir, all the other places of the temple, and He goes with the exiles. He's a movable God. He doesn't stay in the land about to be destroyed with the bad, sort of Israelites, the bad figs that Jeremiah would talk about. He goes into exile. He's been a sanctuary to them in exile, it'll say, when they're fighting over the real property rights of the forfeited land. I mean, the ones that left have forfeited their rights to the land, and people people that remain saying, stay far away. We're now the owners of this land. And Ezekiel says, no, no, no. I was a sanctuary to them, etc. They'll get back their land, etc. He's partisan, as is Jeremiah. He's partisan to the good figs or exiles, etc. We're at 15 minutes, so I won't go too long. The Mount of Olives is the place where the Lord is mentioned to be when he returns from exile in Ezekiel. I forget whether he mentions Mount of Olives or says the mountain which is to the east of Jerusalem, but it's unmistakably the Mount of Olives. And I can double check that for next time, but nevertheless, it's clearly the place where Yahweh makes a stop on his way back to the Holy Land from exile. But where it is really significant is in Zechariah. That's where the Lord plants his feet. In Zechariah 14, the last chapter of Zechariah, which is the last chapter before the last prophet Malachi. Very important. We began talking about Malachi. Suddenly, the Lord will come to his temple. Adon, not Yahweh. The Lord could be Yahweh, but it's interesting that it doesn't say Yahweh, but Adon, Ha-Adon, the Lord. Could be Jesus for Christians. So anyway, in Zechariah, and I'm going to be stopping here, the great eschatological battle will take place in the Mount of Olives, where Yahweh plants his feet, the day of Yahweh. And so this is an incredibly important messianic place, and we'll have more to say about it, especially in the eschatological discourse, Mark 13. He's going to be looking down from the Mount of Olives, observing what's going to happen to the temple. We'll have to stop there.